Hi friends, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome fellow Sagittarians. This is our new moon forecast. We're going to look at the main astrological themes for the upcoming new moon, which is today, December 12th, 2023, in the sign of Sagittarius. We're going to talk about the degree, which is 21 degrees, and talk about what we're looking at here on the screen at the astronomy software. And we're going to look up through the full moon, which will be on December 26th. It will be a full moon in Cancer. We do have a winter or December solstice, I guess I should say. It's not winter everywhere. December solstice is going to be happening during this time. And a number of other things that are really worth talking about. So welcome back, everyone. And if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for being here. And truly, regardless if you're new or a subscriber, I really appreciate you being here and everything that you do to take care of yourself and the people around you and learn as much as you can. So a couple things that I just want to go over this particular information first, just to kind of get warmed up, draw our attention to what's actually happening in the sky, look at some of the more symbolic connections to the energy of this new moon and Sagittarius in general, and then we'll get into the charts and look at the main transits between now and the full moon and the areas of the Sag chart that these transits are going to be happening within. So, of course, if you're not a Sag person, especially Sag rising, moon, and sun, that's what this forecast is really going to address. But if you have strong Sag, you're here to learn about a Sag, or you're just here to learn about astrology, there's going to be something here for you. But we will be looking specifically at the Sagittarius rising chart and where the upcoming transits are going to be happening. So knowing your own chart, having a reading done, being familiar with it really does help to utilize astrology as a tool for yourself, a personal tool. Now, when we get into the chart itself, the other thing that I want to add as another layer to this is, yes, this is a forecast for the Sagittarius individuals, right? Something that you can apply to your particular personal circumstances in life. Again, like I said, using astrology as a tool. But one thing also to keep in mind, so that we add the next layer of macro, is that Sagittarius rising is also related to the natal chart of the United States. As of the signing of Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So if you look at that chart, the rising sign is Sagittarius. So everything that I'm going to talk about here not only is directly related to me as well, because I have a huge stellium in Sagittarius, including my sun, but it also is related to the United States as a nation when it was first born, based on the Declaration of Independence being when it was born. So there's multiple layers here, and there's a lot happening. I mean, I don't think anybody at this point can deny that, although people are at different levels of understanding, and it's the Sag people that really do kind of understand it at its broadest and tend to be, yes, very optimistic, but also focusing on the big picture. And some of the things, and I say this from personal experience, I will fully admit that you can't get away, no sign can get away from its opposition, right? Whatever the sign is. And for Sagittarius, that would be Gemini, ruled by Mercury. So it's in the details that the Sag people really get lost. The information, the data, and what is and what isn't, right? And distinguishing that. It's always about the big picture. And so Sag people love to pontificate. They tend to be very optimistic. They tend to always be looking up. It's always about the broader understanding. Incredible philosophers, teachers, wisdom definitely comes. I don't want to say easier, but Sag people are just kind of aligned with that process. But as they say, the devil's in the details, and that's something where Sag people tend to really get lost, is in the details. So now if you are a Sag person and you have Gemini really prominent, perhaps this is a little bit easier for you. But I bring all of that up because, as you can see here on the astronomy software on the screen, Mercury is kind of a player in all this because, number one, it is the planet that rules the sign opposite of the Sag person, which is Gemini. It's stationing retrograde on the day of the new moon and going back into Sagittarius, where it's at its detriment. So we're going to talk about that more specifically, especially in relation to these two images that I'm going to share with you. But just keep in mind, Sag, and I'm saying this to myself as well, that it's the details that we tend to get lost in, or we tend to want to be blended into the big picture already, right? But without, the wisdom comes from the learning and the knowledge that eventually does coalesce or synthesize or come to conclusion about something that is really a belief system. So, and there's nothing wrong with belief systems, broader understanding, big picture thinking, and perspective. It's just that you can't necessarily start there without a grasp of what is and perception. So perception is a big part of all of this. And with Mercury stationing retrograde at the new moon and the imagery associated with the new moon itself, these Mercury retrogrades, I know they're going to cause havoc for some people, but the reality is these are perfect opportunities to be introspective, to review information, and in this case, really go back over the things that we kind of got, that kind of got swiftly thrown at us that started to establish themselves as Mercury came into Capricorn. So it's going to come out of Capricorn, Mercury is going to go back into Sag, and it's going to station direct on the 1st of January. So I want to, you can't get away from Mercury. So in this case, so what else do I want to share with you right here? So there's a couple things we're looking at. This dark spot is in fact the new moon. So I have this set for today, December 12th, and showing you what's around. Here's the sun, here's Mercury, here's our new moon, right? And we're seeing it as a dark spot because, in fact, we're looking at the side of the moon that is not illuminated. That's what makes the darkness of a new moon. And we have this point, which is Sagittarius A, which is the black hole at the center of our galaxy. So, in terms of starseed language, just to divert here for a second, if you're interested in that, the galactic center at 27 degrees Sagittarius basically is it's a juncture point for a number of different starseed origins or starseed positions. And so I do feel like that there's, I hesitate to call it anything but a reverberation coming from the galactic center that is going to have a big impact, I think, on the way that this new moon is really embraced. And we have to be very careful, I would say, and cautious. Maybe that's the correct word. It's very easy as a Sagittarius person, again, to kind of get caught up in the big picture and miss the details. And if we are not aware of that pitfall, what we end up really putting behind this new moon in terms of intention, we have to, whatever we're imitating and using our imagination to become, we will manifest in some way. And that's why I feel like it's really important to understand where we've been and maybe find the grace and capacity to value the challenges that we've all recently been impacted by. So I just wanted to show you this picture here with the actual living sky itself. And I'm going to show you real quick here what to expect over the coming 2 weeks in terms of the actual transits of these bodies in the sky. So if you come out, we're going to come out a little bit here. So you can see that we are in fact in the center of the galaxy. Here is the band of the Milky Way where this is all happening. And then as we go into past today, which is the 12th, let me see here. Okay, let me get it all queued up. So hopefully what you can see here is, yes, there we go. You see how Mercury is coming into conjunction with the sun. This is called a cazimi, and in this case it's a superior conjunction. Mercury looks as if it's above the sun. Here's the superior conjunction. Here's Sagittarius A, the black hole. And in fact, the sun and Mercury will be conjunct each other just past the galactic center degree-wise pretty much at the solstice degree, right? It's going to be at 0 degrees Capricorn that these two are conjunct. So there's also this incredible light bulb moment about power that is going to be activated, I would say, at this moment of conjunction, which is right after the solstice, right? And so it appears that the sun doesn't move in those 3 days of coming into the solstice period. And then we have Christmas, right? The 25th, and then the 26th is where we're going to have our Cancer full moon, which is on the other side of the earth relative to this. And so it's going to be it's very potent in many ways. And again, like I said, if there's a lot of potential here to really grow into the people that we envision ourselves becoming or wanting to become. But also know that if you are projecting something false, or you're engaged in a LARP that you actually believe in, that's going to manifest too. And it's not necessarily going to yield the same results as if you were a person who really, truly embraced this person up here that was a little battered, a little bruised, but has discovered their true strength and being able to manage what has been thrown at them, as opposed to constantly deflecting this onslaught of energy and ultimately having it weigh them down, and just, everything dissolves, essentially. So we'll get into more of that as I go into the symbolism of the new moon itself. But I also want to bring up these cards because I'm going to leave them in the corner. We're going to refer back to them. But the first is the Nine of Wands. It is ruled by the moon in Sagittarius, which is where the new moon is. And the moon is in Sagittarius. And the Nine of Wands represents strength. So how many of us, myself included here, feel like we've taken some lumps here, that we feel a little battered and bruised and beat up a little bit, right? This person's strength has come from facing the battle and participating and being successful, right? It's not strength that's just preordained or inherent. It's something that has been experienced, and then the creative energy that is coming from the Eight of Wands, as we see down here, which is ruled by Mercury in Sagittarius. It's swift. It's coming at us, right? It is a momentum of creative, fiery energy, right? Because the wands represent fire coming at us. And the Nine of Wands represents like, yeah, I got beat up a little. I got battered a little. I feel bruised a little. But not only did I take that energy and organize it appropriately, as in the Nine of Wands, where you see all of the wands stacked behind him in like a fence, but he's also holding a staff or a wand that really suggests like, I not only did I manage all that energy, but now I am in control of this energy. And this is what real power is. And it's represented by Capricorn. So as Mercury and the Sun come into that superior conjunction on the 22nd, pretty much the solstice sun, I think there's going to be kind of like, and remember that Mercury is retrograde. It's going to go back into Sag. So there's going to be this kind of aha moment, I think, about like, oh, this is where our power really has come from, and being mentally aware of it, because we're going to have to take that with us as Mercury goes back into Sagittarius and then stations direct on the 1st of the year. I don't know what it is. And of course, as I go through the weeklies with people, with my paying membership, we'll be able to really explore that quite a bit of what to expect at the beginning of January. But we're going to be really grateful for the things that right now we feel battered and bruised. This Mercury retrograde might kind of pull back some of this energy, but it's going to be like a slingshot. It's going to come barreling back out, and it's going to be very much connected, and continues to be very much connected to where these our unconscious soul drive, which is represented by the north node of the moon. And I'll point that out as we get into the chart. So I'm going to leave these cards up here just so we can continue to reflect back on them. I know that it's been hard lately, and the solar weather at the beginning of December was, if there was ever a gradient wave, that was it, right? It was constant amplification of the Schumann. It was we were the coronal hole, right? There was very rapid solar wind speed. There was at least one, if not two, CMEs that were projecting plasma at us at the same time. So we were really getting it very strongly. And with a weakening magnetic field, you could see and feel and experience the effects all over, right? In terms of people's mental health, psychiatric health, their cardiac health. People were getting sick. People were getting migraines. People were getting inflammation in their body, right? Eruption of all kinds of stuff because of it. So, but I also feel like something got jarred loose, something got shoved through, something got like disturbed to the point where it's forcing some sort of purge. And I know we feel battered and bruised right now, but we would not recognize our strength truly had we not already gone through that. And I think we're going to be very, very grateful for that come the full moon, and certainly by by the time we get to January. I feel like January and the beginning of 2024 is going to be pretty intense. Not the least of which is Mercury stations direct. It comes out of its shadow on the 20th. That's when the sun comes into Aquarius, and the sun and Pluto will be conjunct at the last degrees of Capricorn, and then each of them will come into the sign of Aquarius at that time. So that's going to be really kicking off 2024 with an incredible amount of power. And Mercury is all wrapped up in this. So just hang tight, people. And if you're feeling jaded, if you're feeling confused, if you are feeling battered and bruised, I mean, like I said, it's where the strength is truly recognized and understood. It's through the battle. And if people are not, the thing with this new moon is if you're being authentic and you're genuine and you really have a sense of the type of person you want to grow into, especially Sag, like this is all coming to the heart of identity for the Sag person, how we project ourselves into the world or how we creatively express ourselves if you're a sun in Sag. And certainly if you're a moon in Sag, how you feel and your emotional strength comes from the purpose and meaning of the struggle, right? That's what we see with the Nine of Wands. That's in the struggle that we recognize our purpose and meaning and our strength. And it's in the purpose and meaning that gives us the energy and the kinetic energy to actually manage any challenges that are thrown at us, much like the Eight of Wands. It's very swift. So let's start getting into the actual chart itself. So here's the 12th of December, which is today, and which is when the new moon is actually happening. So the moon is already in Sagittarius, 3:30, 4 a.m. this morning, Eastern Standard Time. The moon and Mars met right on the ascendant of the U.S. natal chart. So that's also part of this conversation, is the U.S. natal chart, and in addition, I should say, to the individual Sagittarian experience. So there's a particular aspect we're going to go back to on December 7th. So put a pin in that, because we're going to come back to it. There's going to be a harmonic in this forecast involving Mercury retrograde and Jupiter, which is the ruling planet of Sag. We're going to go back to what happened on the 7th. And I remember what happened. Holy, Mars was conjunct Antares, and boy, oh boy, was the venom spitting that day. Very much so. So we're going to get another harmonic of that's going to be way more grounded and thoughtful with the Mercury retrograde, and a willingness to kind of take a pause in some cases, as opposed to on the 7th, which, was Pearl Harbor Day here in the U.S., right? And then the sun was in a trine to Chiron, and then Mars was conjunct Antares. Wow, it was intense. So we'll get to that. So here's today's chart, and in fact, let's go into the actual new moon itself, because it's happening very much towards the end of the day on the 12th, at least Eastern Standard Time. So like 6:30 p.m. actually, we're going to see it here. That's 4:45. Here we go, 5:45. Close enough for this particular new moon. So the Sabian symbol, and this is, I'm going to share it with you so you know where I'm getting this idea here of learning through imitation, and how important it is that we're authentic about who we are and who we want to be. Because if we are intending to double down on our LARP, whatever it is, right? Like if we're faking it till we make it because of some sort of distorted vision of who we are. And truly, the Sagittarius person, with all well intentions involved, still can find themselves lost in the big picture and losing the details and the actual data that's right in front of them, and can find themselves really just caught with their head in the clouds, truly, and not being aware of the actual information that's leading to that understanding in the first place, right? That's very dangerous. So, and I can say, like I said, I can say this with personal experience in tow. So the degree of the new moon, 20 to 21 degrees. So in Sabian symbol language, we always round up to 21 degrees. And this symbol is a child and a dog wearing borrowed glasses, okay? There's nothing random about these symbols. Every aspect of it is important. So the child, presumably is a human that is still learning and is innocent. The dog is really, to me, is connecting to the Cancer energy, right? Which is, the dog is kind of like the perfect Cancerian, right? That is loyal and faithful and completely emotionally invested and empathic, right? So you have a child and a dog wearing these borrowed glasses. And the idea here is that it's the use of imagination and make-believe in anticipating higher stages of development. So the dog and the child are playing pretend, and they're putting on the glasses to be like, one day I'm going to be a grown-up. So they're playing, right? They're playing make-believe. That's the idea here. The child who will grow, and the dog that represents the part of ourselves that stays innocent and, in a sense, very loyal and faithful and very emotionally pure, I would say, right? It's that Cancerian energy. So by imitating these features, right, so putting on the glasses, belonging to a level of consciousness as yet unreachable, right, so the dog is never going to evolve into a person wearing glasses. The child will eventually, but not until they actually are physically able to. The process of growth may be accelerated by kind of imitating the features, right? And so you grow by identifying yourself with that which you want to grow into. And sometimes there needs to be something that kind of supplants the what is already there, right? You have to kind of, like I said, fake it till you make it almost, and act in accordance to what you want to grow into, or what you're identified with, right? And so there's something very there's something very innocent about this, but there's also a skill here, and specifically to analyze your personal opportunity, right, through different dimensions of experience. You recognize that there is something or someone that you want to grow into, that you're not there yet, and you anticipate it, you want to enjoy it, there's a playfulness about it. So this new moon for the Sag people, it's like we want to embody this in terms of how we identify ourselves, how we express ourselves, and putting the intention of this new moon to be able to grow through identification of whatever or whoever it is. I hesitate to say like a master or guru, because that is so beyond over at this point, but you know what I mean. But the negative side of this degree is distortion, right? The idea that the child or the dog, just by putting on the glasses, becomes what they envision that is distorted, and it's a LARP. And so if you find, there are people that are going to double down on their LARP and be like, oh, I put on these glasses and that means that I am. If that intention is set, that is what's going to grow. And I think that is going to be very dangerous. And these are the folks that are not going to be able to handle the catapulting of Mercury stationing direct come January 1st, and these energies coming flying at us. Now, those of us that have some humility here and realize that we have to go back over these things or assess what has already happened, and value how we got here and the strength that we actually have, this is going to be a little easier for those people. Now, look at the chart for Sag people. It's all in the houses of individual identity and expression, which is very difficult for the Sag person, right? Because it's all about the big picture and the purpose of the relationships, whether they're personal or professional or social, spiritual, whatever. It's like without the relationship, there really is no way to practice the art of alchemy, right? And so being very focused and having a lot of energy situated in the area of the chart that has to do with individual identity expression can be very difficult, but I think it's a necessary thing for the Sag person, because without that, you don't really give yourself the opportunity to become that kind of curious, open-minded person in your relationships, right? The Sag boundary has to be very clear. And I do feel like that is the real lesson for the Sag rising in the 6th house of having Taurus here. And so the good news is, and we'll get to this more definitively, is that Jupiter, being the ruling planet of Sagittarius, is sitting over here in the 6th house. And so along with Uranus. So there's major metamorphosis happening at a personal level for the Sag people. That's not going away anytime soon. But there is support here with Jupiter. And in fact, when Jupiter stations direct, which will be at the same degree as the eclipsed moon that we just had, you're going to see some serious expansion in this area. But for now, it's still retrograde, and there's still that inner standing that needs to be worked with and addressed. And it's not exactly easy, right? The 6th house is not easy. So the new moon is all about growth through identifying with who it is you want to grow into and learn through imitation, right? And all new moons are a beginning in unconsciousness, right? There's this idea that you set the intention for the seed, and then the seed naturally grows. So as long as you have your eyes and your, the lenses of those glasses, as long as you recognize that you do not just become the thing just because you put on the glasses, but you also recognize how powerful the process of the imitation or the playfulness, there's a lot of potential here to really grow this month, okay? And I know, and we're gonna need it, right? I mean, like I said, January, it's gonna be right out the gate throughout January, how intense it's gonna be. Okay, so let's start going through the main transits of this whole half of the lunar cycle. So we have the other thing that is very striking, speaking of the 6th house and Sagittarius, is that at the same time, the sun, as you can see here, is in a quincunx, speaking of your 6th house, with Uranus. And Uranus in a 6th house is, no joke, right? I mean, metamorphosis, you have the field of crisis, which is your 6th house, because that's usually the thing that gets your shit together, is when you have a major crisis, a health crisis, some other like work crisis, whatever it is. It's the 6th house is where you put your resources to work. And when Uranus is in here, it's just like, it's going to facilitate that very powerfully, but it's usually really disruptive. Now it's been retrograde, so things have been a little less like, oh my gosh, it's been more internalized, I think. But this sun quincunx Uranus is really gonna, I think, entice and encourage and poke at people. There's going to be a yearning for something new and exciting. That's the other thing too. I think there's going to be a lot of that optimistic Sag energy of like, oh, if I just work at it, I can become this person. If I just imitate them, if I just do the things that I know that these people do, if I can grow into that actual person myself, I can become a master, for instance. So positive change and exciting opportunities are possible, right? But you may come under pressure to make changes with a sun quincunx Uranus, right? And I feel like that you don't want to move too quickly here, right? And I think the retrograde of Uranus is a big part of that and will assist in that, so you're not too daring or impulsive or unpredictable. But the other thing is, with the retrograde, you may not be nearly as, I don't know, it may not be so dramatic that you even realize that you're being kind of like poked into making change. So there's a lot of enhanced creativity, originality, ingenuity. This is all coming from Astrology King, by the way, the transit of Sun quincunx Uranus. This is a mind expanding type of aspect, and it's happening between you as you as a person, right? The Sun in Sag in the 1st house of the Sag person, in relationship to the area of life where you actually put it into practice, whatever it is, your vision, your passion, your motivation, it becomes a practice in the sixth house. But imagining a better future and anticipating change can bring insecurity, right? And fear. And so you may be feeling the anticipation. You actually are kind of excited about it. You're like, yeah, look at the possibilities of what, I can do and become and how I can grow. And being mindful of the challenges you've already experienced. But that also can lead to fear and irritability and crisis of indecision. Now, I will say that Uranus in the sixth house, it's so complete of a crisis function that you may not be able to do anything necessarily about it. If anything, it'll reinforce how important it is that you really kind of assess yourself and where your strength comes from. So maybe there will be some kind of rapid upheaval or change in your routine or your work life, or what you do with yourself every day. Maybe it's a health crisis when we're talking about the sixth house. But there's also, like I said, enhanced creativity. Open-mindedness is very ideal for experimenting and adapting and altering. So every time we have a quincunx, it's about the inner adjustment based on circumstances that we can't resolve. And that's what the quincunx allows for, is adjustment. So doing something slightly different could get better results than attempting radical changes. And that I keep getting that hit of radical changes may not necessarily be the best way, especially with the retrograde, but becoming aware of what could change and what you could what types of things you could amend or shift around in terms of your routine or your work life or what you just do with yourself every day. But if you also stubbornly resist this change, I'm telling you, or you become arrogant or disruptive, and of course this goes along again with people who have this distorted vision of themselves. They are living their LARP. They have no idea, or they just can't bear to, be honest with themselves. You could, if you stubbornly resist this change, you could miss a significant opportunity, or worst case scenario is really damage your position and your prospects. It'll really work against people in some situations. So this is all happening today, by the way. And as with the moon, so today is Tuesday, so Wednesday into Thursday into Friday, the moon is going to finish through Sag. It's going to come into Capricorn. And on the 15th, which is Friday, the sun is going to come into a trine with Rahu, which is the north node, and the moon will move into Aquarius. But the big thing on Friday that I think is really interesting, so we're going to look at it, is this grand fire trine with Lilith. So let's talk about Lilith. I like talking about Lilith. She's really misunderstood. Now, in astrology, when you read astrology, Black Moon Lilith is the lunar apogee. It is that space that is reserved for, it is that pinpointed space in the lunar orbit that is furthest away from the planet. That is the lunar apogee. The perigee is when the moon is the closest to the Earth in its orbit. So you're also going to see that the moon in Aquarius, as it's coming, it'll still be in its new moon phase, but it'll start getting, the crescent is going to be very close to us. So it'll be a nice, large, thumbnail type of thing when it comes into this and comes into opposition with Lilith. But before we get there, what I'd like to point out is this grand fire trine and Lilith. So it's clear in the Sag chart, Sag rising, that the Sag person expresses their passion, their joy, their authentic voice, that is the Leo energy, in the 9th house, which is the traditional house of Sagittarius anyway. It is the house of advanced training, higher education, alchemy, philosophy, religious belief, understanding, synthesis. It's the big picture. Foreign travel. So when we broaden our cultural horizons by traveling outside of our home or what is immediately around us every day, we start to understand the purpose and meaning of relationship more. So this is the area that the Sag person, especially the Sag rising person, shines, is in Leo in the 9th house, okay? So Lilith here is continually kind of anchoring this primal urge for the Sag person as it's continuing to come back into Leo, comes into Leo, and then Virgo, and it's just oscillating back and forth between these two right now in this area of the big picture. And so this could be foreign travel. This could be higher education. This could be wisdom teaching in some way. This could be, some sort of research coming to a conclusion. This is just understanding and belief. This is what the ninth house is about. So there is this primal aspect that's drawing energy and power into this area for the Sag person, just in general, right? And so the thing about Lilith is that if you are aware of it and you don't try to fill that void within you that is only meant to be filled by the divine spark, right? The divine flame, the Pentecostal fire. When you leave that space, then you are acknowledging and trusting in divine source and that divine energy to come into your life at the appropriate time. Many people the dark feminine aspect of Lilith is when people feel cut off and frustrated and empty. They feel the void and they want to fill it. And this is when people act out in ways that are disempowering, or they're overcompensating in some way. So that's the other thing, that the Sag person is probably getting drawn into these ninth house big picture energies pretty consistently without even realizing it. Now this fire trine on the 15th is really important to understand, because you have Mars in your sign, in our sign I should say, which is Sagittarius, in the first house, right? So Mars in the first is very happy here, right? It's about the projection instinctually and spontaneously of self out into the world. There's no thought about it. There is only action. It is the spark of life, and Mars is the agent of that and just projects outward, right? Is very penetrating. That's what, Mars represents. It's the seed in and of itself. And all of these houses are, the Sag rising chart, all of these houses are already fire elements. And so you can see that Mars is projecting out. Chiron is in the 5th house of the individual's passions, joy, fun, playfulness, children, lust, romance, right? The thing that motivates you, the thing that your soul shines. That's what happens in the 5th house. And with Chiron here, I mean, there's been some serious, I would say that there's, how do I put this? With Chiron in the 5th, I mean, it's very experiential, and it also is very, well, of course it's intense, but in the 5th house, let's see here. It's like Chiron is like a powerful child within when it's in the 5th house, okay? So it can be a monster demanding first place, or a powerful generator of generative forces, creative energy. I think this moment here, excuse me, damn, this moment here is very instrumental in terms of locking in and stabilizing the creative energy in a way that it's either going to be watching for the right opportunity and being able to identify it and act on it, or this fire trine is going to stabilize the projection of self towards a direction that is really the path of least resistance, right? Because you want to feel, because you want to embody the sense, the storm passing, right? And this I feel like, again, it's either going to be incredibly powerful, generative, creative force here with Chiron, or it's going to be a monster, and that monster energy is just going to, is really going to be, it's going to find its outlet through Lilith up here in the 9th house. So how that really translates is going to be different for everyone, but I do also see how much this is going to be wrapped up in the U.S. natal chart in general, especially because of this 5th house energy. Now, the other thing that is present is the fact that the sun will be in a trine to the North Node, which is still in the 5th house. And so even these underlying unconscious drives currently that we're all experiencing, for the Sag person, it's pulling the Sag person in the direction of their heart's desire, their passion, their joy, their excitement, the thing that motivates them. It is our creative essence coming through us in the 5th house, right? And like I said, it's very playful, but it's more important that it's authentic, right? So sometimes grief and sorrow and tears can be the 5th house. Whatever is an expression of your authentic self comes through the 5th house. And that's also where the Sag person is being drawn into. And the trine with the sun and this particular position has a lot to do with where Mercury is going to station direct on the 1st of January, this degree. And so, there is a fulfillment that I think we're all looking for, and we're all looking for and willing to move towards it, if that makes sense. And these trines you have to be careful of, because they're not... They don't provide any friction or opportunity for growth, but they're really stabilizing. And sometimes it's hard to get out of what they are. And again, I think it has a lot to do with what kind of intentions we set with this new moon, and how this creative energy can be utilized for good, and give us a sense of that we believe that the storm has ended, even if we don't necessarily see all the evidence around us right now. I think that has a lot to do with the retrograde of Chiron, and when it stations direct, I feel like that's going to start becoming more apparent. But I do feel like that if we're following the path of least resistance, if we're not allowing kind of our natural instincts to guide us to places, then we're easily taken over. And part of that is going to be, I don't know, it could be easily hijacked into a sense of fulfillment in this area. Wow, this is... It sounds more complicated than it really is. It has so much to do with, like, what is it that you are looking to grow into? What type of person are you wanting to grow into? Who is the model for the person you want to be? And what types of things are you doing to act in accordance with that? Again, it all comes back around to that question, because that's the intention that's getting set with this new moon, either consciously or unconsciously. So that's on Friday the 15th. Incredible amount of creative energy in this grand fire trine in the fire houses for the Sag person, which is a fire sign. So again, there is a lot of kinetic energy happening here that's very stabilized and seems to be really pointed and directed up into this area that Sag loves, which is the 9th house, the big picture. Let's see here. Now, coming through the weekend, the moon is in Aquarius, and this is where the sun squares Neptune. So when we come into Saturday, we see that this square becomes exact. And in fact, there is another T-square that we're going to look at here with Venus. We haven't really talked about Venus much yet in this forecast, but we will, because she's about to become very active again in the astrology in general, and certainly in Scorpio, she is at her detriment. She's least powerful, and for the Sag person, this is the 12th house of endings. So, there are some deep places that are really uncomfortable at the karmic level, at the unconscious, collective unconscious level, that I think is very difficult for the Sag people right now. Well, everyone, but especially for the Sag rising, because it's in the 12th house. Like, this is difficult. This is hard, and this T-square is not making it any better. And in fact, it's really close to creating a grand square with Uranus. So really showing that the ghost point of this T-square is over here in the 6th house with, again, the house where you get your shit together, basically. So, but first, let's talk about this sun square Neptune, because Neptune is now direct. The purge is really strong. You can feel the torrent of cleansing energy just coming through at the karmic level, the collective level, the consciousness level. And for the Sag person, I mean, this is really just dissolving all of the family boundaries, all of the boundaries, and roots that you identified as stabilizing you emotionally, but it also is allowing you to spread and broaden those types of connections to places you may never had allowed yourself to connect to before. And so it goes both ways. It's like this huge torrent of water comes through, and yeah, it's cleansing everything and it pushes things around. It's just like when you water your plants, right? The water comes in and it creates all these channels in the soil, and then the root systems are really are able to spread out more efficiently than they would otherwise, and nutrients get in and the worms are able to go through. So there's something to be said for this torrent of experience and emotional energy of Pisces coming through. The thing with the square with the Sagittarius sun is that, the Sun square Neptune can really weaken our vitality. So making it hard to get motivated. There is my timer. So it can make it hard to get motivated or enthusiastic about anything, especially if you are really hoping to identify with and be kind of a light in some ways with where things could go, anticipating the power that is generated when we work together, when we engage in the struggle together, right? The meaning and purpose of the friction. So with Neptune just dissolving all of our family ties, the places where we feel, especially the Sag rising, where you feel safe, secure, what's going on at the home and family aspect. But even as a nation, that's the other thing. If we're going to talk about the United States chart, then having Neptune here in the 4th house is also dissolving all of those boundaries too. So it can very much weaken our vitality and be very, very difficult to stay enthusiastic about where things are going in terms of the person that we want to be, that we anticipate, because of what's being dissolved in terms of our emotional stability. So there's a lot of confusion, there's disappointment, we may be forced to battle against the odds. There goes that 9 of Wands again. You may feel insecure or guilty or apologetic. Seeing only the best in people increases the chance of disillusionment. I know that is hard for Sag people because that's a tendency, but at the same time, if we over-idealize people and we just lead ourselves to being gullible, and we can really find ourselves engaged in scandal or slander. And boy, I'm seeing a lot of this already. It's going to reach a fever pitch at this point over the weekend. So we're talking about Saturday. So in order to counter this influence, you have to be above board in everything. And this goes back to Mercury and Gemini and the Mercury retrograde. Like the conversations, the communications, it all has to be above board. It has to be transparent. It has to be consistent. And this is not a time for high stress competitive things, right? And because predators really hone in on your instability, especially with Neptune and Pisces like this. Everybody becomes more susceptible to infection, weakened vitality, hypochondria, more sensitive to all kinds of substances, mental health issues, like paranoia and depression can really be aggravated by this. So please take very good care of yourself. Personal relationships may be subject to dishonesty and deception. And I think this is probably the most relevant for what area Neptune is, because the 4th house is how you feel based on your most intimate relationships. I feel like that this could very easily be about dishonesty and deception, and secrets harder to keep. Or the other side is more challenging to uncover, and especially with Neptune direct, the fog is rolling back in. So it's more difficult now to, see things for what they are. But the best use of this energy, honestly, is to, you can just tap into creativity, imagination, right? Knowing that certain aspects of these boundaries emotionally are being dissolved is, it's a purge. It's a catharsis at a soul level. It doesn't mean that you can't grow into or even enjoy in an anticipatory way where things are going and where you are going, but it will be very difficult, and people are going to feel confused and disappointed and guilty and disillusioned. So if you find yourself in that place, do your best to realize it's not forever. And if you are around people who are in this place, you can be a really good source of groundedness for them, or just be sympathetic or empathic and really listen to people. So that's on Saturday the 16th. And what else do we have here? The 17th, the moon continues through Aquarius. The 18th, the moon moves into Pisces. And this is where we get the second Mercury trine to Jupiter, which is on the 18th. So now the moon will be, now again, here's this T-square with Venus and Lilith and the moon. And honestly, this is just, again, it's just, what is it? I think there's going to be emotional sense of this is what it's going to take, to achieve this sense of balance and happiness right in front of me. And even though part of the karmic aspect of Venus in the 12th house is really starting to get comfortable with where things are going, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there also seems to be a need to really embrace having to brave the storm, essentially. So that is happening at the same time as this square to Neptune. So, the 15th is going to be this incredible creative energy with that grand fire trine, and then right after it is, you're going to see, here's all the challenges, is on Saturday the 16th. Now the 18th, like I said, is where we get that second trine between Mercury and Jupiter. And this time Mercury is retrograde and Jupiter is at the degree it's going to station, and it's going to station direct at the degree that the full moon was eclipsed the last lunar cycle, right? When we had the Taurus full moon, when the sun was in Scorpio. This is where Jupiter stations direct, and this is where these two are in a trine together. So, like I said, this is optimism, good news. And the thing where Mercury is really a threshold, that we kind of take a pause, especially with Mercury in its retrograde. The need to complete any undertaking before seeking entrance to whatever is found beyond, right? And Jupiter is at this position of like, okay, this is how we bridge the gap, but we're not quite there yet. So there is something here in this trine that optimism and good news, it may not seem like that, but you can find that through research and study and even socializing. Mercury trine Neptune, but there's something, it's less about socializing here and more about going into the details, again, doing more research and study in order to find, even if you don't know what it is yet, knowing that you have to complete something, that you've reached a threshold, that there needs to be a pause, so that you can make plans based on your instincts and positive thinking. This is also really important. Now, the 19th is where we have our first quarter moon, and it's going to be in Pisces. It's going to be right after the conjunction with Neptune, which is very activating for all of those really Piscean qualities, being imaginative and creative and inspired by the muse and empathic and really feeling into other things and sensitive and intuitive, all of the things. But it also can cause confusion, right? It's the moon meeting Neptune. So we're going to be a lot of personal feels about the collective purge that Neptune is representing right now. But it's at the galactic center that the sun and the moon come into this first quarter square, which is always a crisis in action. What am I going to do? The sun is like, there is something that is necessary. There's a necessity about the Sag person, something that has been in use for a really long time, something that has served a purpose, something that has literally bridged over something that has been in action for a long time, and there's no need to really get rid of it. But with the moon here, that's just like everything is actually coming to fruition here, right? Like the whole thing is in terms of where the Sag person is feeling emotionally grounded and rooted, right? Because that's what the fourth house is all about. So what do? Do I emotionally tap into and there is no this or that. That's the thing about squares. There's no resolving this energy at all. This is just a matter of, oh, that's really uncomfortable because there's these cross purposes of what I actually do, because now there is starting to be an awareness growing from the new moon. And so this is that first moment of challenge. challenge of like, okay, set intentions, learning through imitation, growing through identification with that which I want to grow into. And now I hit this point with the moon in Pisces, conjunct Neptune, by the way, that's just like, it's all, it's just all wiped clean and come to full fruition, right? A fertile garden under the full moon. Suggesting that everything we need is here and it's tailored towards us, which can feel really weird considering Neptune in the fourth house just seems to keep dissolving boundaries more and more and more. But in that exact thing, we're going to discover the true essence of who we are and where we came from, and that everything we need is always here for us as we move into new stages of creative potential. There's a part of ourselves with the sun in Sag, for the Sag person, that we're not willing to let go of, that has been necessary and has been functional this whole time. And the thing is that we're going to have to decide what it is that we want to hold on to, if it's worth holding on to, and if it's going to actually allow us to grow. I think that's what we're going to find here with this particular first quarter moon on the 19th. Now, the 21st is the solstice, and that is when not only the sun reaches the 0 degree mark of Capricorn, but we're also going to, now this is for Friday the 22nd, we're getting pretty close now to the end of this forecast, but we also have Venus opposite Uranus. Remember how I talked about Venus was going to start coming back into play? This is about it, because she's going to be opposite Uranus. She's going to come into a trine with Neptune as well. But this opposition to Uranus is going to cause some serious tension, right? Between, well, Uranus, which is just going to create that crisis through Uranus making rapid change and unexpected change, but it's also going to, I just feel like it's going to be a very difficult descent into the it's going to be a revelation of what lies beyond our knowledge of what has been, right? There's going to be a sense of having to really plunge ahead into the unknown, and it's going to be precipitated, I think, is going to be triggered by Uranus in terms of your everyday activities and whatever that is for you, your works, your labors, your service, your routines, right? That's what's happening in the 6th house, your practices, your disciplines. So there's going to be a change here, something that's going to come up that's going to cause some upset and tension here, and could manifest in a number of different ways. They're always talking about Venus in terms of relationships, and in Scorpio, absolutely, she's much more interested in what she can get from the relationship, and she is not at her best there, right? She's not very beautiful or kind or patient or maternal in Scorpio. She's actually kind of just obsessed with what she can get out of the relationship, which is why she's not at her best there. Now, there's also sensitivity to what is generated in terms of power dynamics in relationships that can be really uncomfortable, and Venus does not like to be uncomfortable either. So having this opposition with Uranus is going to cause some serious problems, and there may be a financial windfall, but especially with Venus in Scorpio, but I would say to be really careful, not get pulled into gambling or any other kind of financial schemes. Something is going to change in terms, again, your routine, your day-to-day activities, and your works and labors that are going to, there's going to be an uncomfortable revelation in terms of one's karma, the collective unconscious, the ending of something, which often happens in the 12th house. In some ways, they're going to be drawing the curtains aside, but in other ways, it's going to be very disruptive. As we're coming into the solstice, which is the sun reaching 0 degrees Capricorn. Now, thankfully, Mercury will sextile Saturn as this is happening. So this is excellent for clear thinking, especially with Mercury in Saturn's sign right now. So clear thinking, good judgment, organizational skills, long-term investments are, to sign contracts or negotiate long-range plans. Now remember, Mercury's retrograde. So whatever it is that you're kind of using these clear thinking skills and good judgment, you're using them for something that is coming later, right? And finding that mental stability in your eagerness for new experiences from its connection to Saturn, okay? This is a good time for studying and a good time for teaching. Critical mental skills can be matched by open and honest communication. And you may want to talk to people about something you've learned or discovered, writing a blog post or making a video or something that you're like, it's time to share. But also, keep in mind that this is maybe not exactly the right time because of the retrograde, but it's getting things lined up. The scaffolding could be put into place here, or just encouraging more solid and clear thinking, if that makes sense. As the sun comes into Capricorn and then Mercury comes into a conjunction with the sun. And we talked about that at the beginning. So that's on the 22nd. So we're coming into the home stretch here. And thanks for sticking with me. I feel like there's a lot of information that I need to really give. And I've tried to make this shorter. And this particular one, I'm like, no, there needs to be much more because of the Sag propensity to only focus on the big picture. I feel like getting into the details is really important in this situation. So the 23rd, 24th is also when the sun comes into that same sextile with Saturn. So again, there's quite a bit of energy that's going to give like patience, perseverance, a strong work ethic, a sense of duty, a serious attitude, right? As the sun is also coming into Capricorn, which is the sign of Saturn, and you're determined to get practical results and not make mistakes. So this is great coming into this area. This is a really good time to complete a task, and you can earn the trust and respect of others right now with something like this. So you had Mercury that's kind of getting the brain wrapped around things and kind of clear thinking, and then the sun kind of shows up here at the solstice and is like, all right, like I'm ready to put my best foot forward, and a sense of duty, like I said, and a serious attitude make this a really good time to meet your goals. This is great. Because and Christmas Day, now that's Christmas Eve, right? The 23rd, 24th into the 25th. And this is such a nice transit to have Venus and Neptune in a trine on Christmas Day, right? This is very perfect for relaxation. Your sense of compassion and wishing to serve others is very heightened when Venus is in a trine to Neptune. This can be an excellent time to just help out people who are less fortunate, which is something that we feel inspired to do anyway at this time of year. So this is really, really nice. You're more inclined to want to share through compassion and empathy. And things are very tender now. And connecting to a companion at the spiritual level is more critical than some, especially because Venus and Scorpio can be much more focused on sexuality as a kind of a tantric type of activity that's harnessing energy, as much less than about the connection. So that could be the case. I would say, though, with the trine to Neptune like this, it just makes it so much more, there's just so much more compassion and empathy and a willingness to serve others and to be kind of focused on humanity as a whole in this moment. And I do feel like for the Sag person, the connection into the 12th house with Venus and Scorpio, I feel like in this moment you'll really just see the underlying structure. You'll feel it, you'll be aware of it, you will experience it, and what is actually getting purged away. And I think this is a really nice transit to be having on Christmas. I think there's going to be a lot that's let go because people will naturally be like, oh, I really see the underpinnings here. And for the Sag person, you're really just going to resolve some deep karma, I feel like. There's some things coming to an end here for Sag people. And of course, the country, right? When it comes to the impact of Neptune in terms of home and family of origin and our sense of patriotism, and certainly our emotional stability, our self-esteem, and our character. Those are all fourth house things. And then the moon comes into Gemini, and then on the 26th, the moon comes into Cancer. We have our full moon in Cancer, and Chiron stations direct on the 26th. So it's a incredibly busy and intense 2 weeks. leading up to this full moon. Sag people, just be aware that the full moon will be in your 8th house, which is about shared resources, power dynamics. So by the time we get to the full moon, Sag people will have a very clear indication of how it's going, right? Are you growing into, because you'll feel very deeply and be very sensitive to if this energy of being kind of mobilized and quote unquote on the warpath, how it's going, basically. You know what I mean? You will become like a mirror for those power dynamics that are shared, and it's going to be very revealing at this point, for ourselves and certainly for the people around us too, to be like, they kind of project themselves in this way, but when it comes to the actual power dynamics in the relationships with this person, it's not adding up, right? Or if it is adding up, it's looking in the mirror and seeing the true self, which is the shadow. Or that part of ourselves that is often shadowed. So that's going to be very revealing. So again, if you go back to that 9 of Wands, my friends, you might feel battered and bruised now, but it ain't going to be nothing compared to the slingshot effect of Mercury stationing direct, and we get this bombardment yet again at the beginning of January. So if you're feeling battered and bruised and you just don't have it in you anymore, just know that you do. And if not for the Sag people, who would be out there, pontificating and, really sharing the wisdom of what it's all about? Because the Sag person is always looking up and is always optimistic about the big picture, whatever it is that big picture is for them. So, my friends, I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so much and sticking with me. You know what to do to support this channel if you find this information valuable. All the links you need to explore more, go to the website, social media, book a reading. That's all in the description box below. Thank you so much. Enjoy the new moon, Sagittarius. This is an incredible opportunity for growth, big time, and leave behind so much that is just time to be left. And you don't have to be afraid. Okay? I mean, it's very difficult to leave aspects of ourselves behind, but this is how we grow. And as long as we're being honest with ourselves and we're not caught up in the distorted vision of some sort of LARP of who we think we are, then I think we're going to be just fine. So take care, Sagittarius. And everyone else that is watching this video, I truly appreciate all of you so very much. And I'll see you on the next forecast, full moon forecast on the 26th. Later, y'all. Bye.